A newborn spoke before the High Elder finished the blessing. Not a cry, not an instinctive sound. One unmistakable word that echoed through the silent throne hall, "Mother." Every candle flickered. The ceremonial wolves surrounding the moon altar lowered their heads at once. Hundreds of nobles stared in disbelief as the infant Prince Orion reached away from Queen Celine's embrace and stretched both tiny hands toward a quiet palace servant standing near the back of the chamber. Mara froze. She instinctively stepped backward. "No." The whisper escaped her trembling lips. "There has been some terrible mistake." Alpha King Lucian Evernight rose from his throne, unable to look away from the impossible scene before him. Within 45 minutes, the royal succession decree would be sealed beneath the ancient moon seal. Once the decree was completed, the line of succession could never be challenged without threatening every alliance across the continent and risking another generation of civil war. The kingdom had less than 1 hour before history became permanent. Before we discover why a royal heir recognized a woman no one believed he had ever met, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you are listening from today. Your support helps these stories reach everyone who still believes truth can survive even the deepest deception. Now let us return to the day a single word shook an entire kingdom. Prince Orion began crying, not toward the queen, toward Mara. The servant hesitated before carefully stepping forward. The moment she accepted the child into her arms, the crying stopped. The infant smiled peacefully and rested his tiny hand against her cheek. Then, for the second time, he softly whispered, "Mother." Across the throne hall, High Elder Voss dropped the ancient blessing scroll. His face turned completely white. Somewhere deep beneath the royal palace, an ancient bell that had remained silent for centuries rang once. Long before Prince Orion called her mother, Mara had already become invisible. That was the safest way to survive inside the royal palace. Every morning, she awoke long before the castle bells announced dawn, while nobles still slept beneath embroidered blankets and roaring fireplaces. Mara crossed the silent corridors carrying buckets of warm water, clean linens, and baskets of fresh bread for the palace kitchens. Few people greeted her. Most never noticed she was there. To the court, she was simply another servant. To the other servants, she was the woman who quietly finished everyone's hardest work without ever asking for recognition. If an elderly cook became ill, Mara prepared every meal herself. If a stable boy injured his hand, she cleaned the wound before returning to her own duties. If a frightened kitchen maid cried after being scolded by a noble, Mara was always the first to sit beside her until the tears stopped. No one remembered when she had first arrived. It felt as though she had simply always been there. Even Mara herself remembered very little. Her earliest memories were scattered like broken glass. A cold river, a burning carriage, a woman's desperate voice, hands covered in blood. Then darkness. When she finally awakened years ago, an elderly healer living near the palace had found her unconscious beside the eastern forest, with no family name, no possessions, and only a faded silver pendant hanging around her neck. The pendant carried the shape of a crescent moon wrapped around the paw of a wolf cub. The old healer had asked if she remembered where it came from. She never could. The pendant became the only proof that her life had existed before the river. Every evening, after her palace duties ended, Mara quietly slipped through the forgotten servants' gate near the western wall. Most believed she returned to a rented room in the city. She never corrected them. Instead, she walked another mile beyond the marketplace until she reached a small, abandoned chapel overlooking the river. Years earlier, The chapel had collapsed after a harsh winter storm. The kingdom never rebuilt it. Mara did, not with wealth, with patience, piece by piece, stone by stone. The abandoned chapel slowly became something entirely different. A refuge inside lived 11 orphaned wolf children. Some had lost parents during border raids. Others had been abandoned because their wolf forms awakened too early. One little girl had been left outside the palace gates during a snowstorm, wrapped inside nothing more than a torn blanket. Mara had carried her all the way to the chapel through freezing rain. None of the children knew who their real families were. None cared. To them, Mara was simply home. The smallest boy rushed into her arms every evening. "Miss Mara, you came back. I promised I would. You always do. I always will." Dinner rarely contained more than vegetable soup, homemade bread, and herbs gathered beside the river. Sometimes there was barely enough. Whenever food ran short, Mara quietly claimed she had already eaten at the palace. The older children knew she was lying. They often broke their own bread in half while pretending they were no longer hungry. She smiled every time. Kindness had become contagious inside the little chapel. After dinner, Mara read stories beside the fireplace. Not fairy tales about glorious kings, stories about ordinary people who chose compassion when no one else was watching. She wanted the children to believe greatness could wear simple clothes. Later that night, after every child had fallen asleep, Mara carefully unlocked a small wooden chest hidden beneath loose floorboards. Inside rested only 3 things: her silver pendant, a faded baby blanket embroidered with the royal crest, and a torn page from an ancient palace record. Most of the writing had disappeared. Only one sentence remained readable. "When the child remembers the forgotten mother before the kingdom remembers the forgotten truth, the moon shall awaken what deception buried." Mara stared at the words every night. She had no idea why she kept the parchment. Something inside her simply refused to let it go. She gently folded it away again. Outside the chapel, the wind carried distant church bells from the capital. The blessing ceremony had already begun. She whispered a quiet prayer for the newborn prince. "I hope you never know loneliness." She did not realize that only hours later. He would know her name without ever being taught. Back inside the palace, panic spread through the royal council. High Elder Voss demanded every servant's record be brought before him. Find out who Mara truly is. Immediately. Royal archivists searched through shelves untouched for decades. One frightened young scholar finally spoke. "My lord, the records." "What records?" "The files concerning a servant named Mara. They have all been removed." Silence filled the archive. "Removed? Years ago. By whose order?" The scholar swallowed hard. "There is no signature. There is only one royal seal." Voss snatched the fragile ledger. His hands began trembling. The seal did not belong to the current king. It belonged to a monarch who had died nearly 28 years earlier. Someone, long before Lucien inherited the throne, had erased Mara from history. At that exact moment, somewhere deep beneath the palace, an ancient stone chamber sealed for generations awakened with a low, echoing rumble. The forgotten archive of the first mothers had begun opening. No living elder had ever seen its doors move. No one except the moon goddess herself was meant to decide when those secrets would return. And tonight, the palace was about to remember a woman history had been ordered to forget. The palace doors opened by themselves, not because a servant pushed them, not because the wind had grown stronger. An invisible force swept through the great hall, extinguishing every torch except those surrounding Mara. The flames nearest her burned silver. Every wolf inside the palace became restless. Royal guards struggled to restrain their companions as deep growls echoed beneath the vaulted ceiling. The wolves were not preparing for battle. They were recognizing someone. Alpha King Lucien slowly descended the marble steps from the throne. His gaze never left Mara. She still cradled Prince Orion gently against her shoulder. The infant had refused every nurse, every royal cradle, every comforting lullaby. Only Mara's heartbeat had quieted his tears. No explanation satisfied the court. No explanation satisfied Lucien. The High Council demanded immediate judgment. The ancient Moon Tribunal would convene in less than 2 days. If Mara were declared guilty of using forbidden sorcery before the hearing, she could be imprisoned indefinitely. And Prince Orion would become the center of a succession crisis capable of dividing every allied kingdom. Time had become the kingdom's greatest enemy. Before the truth hidden inside one forgotten heartbeat changes an empire forever. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you are listening from today. Your support allows these stories to reach everyone who still believes destiny cannot be erased by lies. Now let us return to the palace where fate had begun to awaken. Lucien approached slowly. Every instinct urged caution, yet something stronger pulled him forward. Mara lowered her eyes respectfully. "Your Majesty, I never intended to interrupt the ceremony." "I know." His voice remained unusually calm. "What happened was not your doing." "I wish I understood it." "So do I." Prince Orion looked toward Lucien and smiled. Then, with remarkable determination for a newborn, the child reached outward. One tiny hand grasped Lucien's thumb. The other never released Mara. The king froze. The child refused to separate them. Captain Rowan, commander of the Royal Guard, quietly whispered behind him. "It is almost as though the prince believes they belong together." No one answered, because everyone had begun thinking the same impossible thought. Lucien extended one hand toward Mara. "I need to ask your permission." She looked up, surprised. "My permission? May I examine the pendant you wear?" Instinctively, Mara touched the silver crescent resting beneath her collar. "I suppose so." She carefully removed it. The moment Lucien accepted the pendant into his palm, everything changed. Warmth flooded through his body, not ordinary warmth, ancient, primal. Electric currents raced beneath his skin. His heartbeat pounded violently against his ribs. Every muscle tightened. Every breath became deeper. A low, involuntary purr vibrated from deep within his chest. The sound echoed through the silent hall. Every alpha present immediately turned toward him. "Mate." The word exploded through Lucien's consciousness. Moswell. His wolf had never reacted this way, not once, not to Queen Selene, not to any noblewoman, not throughout 32 years of life. Only now, only here, only because of Mara. Across from him, Mara gasped. Her fingers trembled uncontrollably. The same warmth blossomed inside her heart. She felt invisible threads wrapping gently around her soul. Safe, familiar, home. She staggered slightly. Lucien instinctively caught her before she fell. The instant their hands touched, silver light erupted around them. Not blinding, gentle, like moonlight reflected across still water. Every candle inside the great hall burned brighter. Prince Orion laughed happily. High Elder Voss stepped backward. "No, it cannot." Queen Selene stared silently. Instead of anger, relief slowly appeared upon her face. She had lived for years wondering why the sacred bond between herself and Lucien had always felt incomplete. Now she finally understood. It had never belonged to her. Lucien looked into Mara's eyes. "I know this sounds impossible. My wolf. He knows you, Mara whispered through tears. My heart knows you too. I do not remember why. Before another word could be spoken, a deafening crack echoed beneath the palace. The marble floor trembled violently. Ancient silver runes hidden beneath centuries of stone suddenly illuminated. Royal scholars stared in disbelief. One elderly historian collapsed to his knees. The Hall of Mothers. It is awakening, deep beneath the royal palace. Massive stone doors that had remained sealed for nearly 900 years slowly opened. Dust filled forgotten corridors. Moonlight poured into chambers untouched since the age of the first Alpha Kings. At the center of the hidden sanctuary rested a single crystal cradle. Inside lay another silver pendant, identical to Mara's, except this one carried the royal seal engraved upon its reverse. High Elder Benedict carefully lifted the relic. His hands shook. There were always two. He looked toward Lucienne. One for the child. One for the woman chosen to protect him. Silence swallowed the chamber. Then another voice interrupted. Cold, measured. Dangerous. Regent Alaric Thorne stepped from the shadows, surrounded by armored advisors. Enough! Every royal guard turned immediately. Alaric smiled without warmth. A touching story. But kingdoms are not ruled by feelings. He looked directly at Mara. This servant has bewitched the royal heir. He turned toward the assembled nobles. And now, she seeks to enchant the king himself. Several frightened council members murmured in agreement. Others looked uncertain. Lucienne stepped protectively in front of Mara. You are making accusations without proof, Alaric answered calmly. Proof? He slowly raised a sealed document bearing the ancient crimson insignia of the royal tribunal. I already have it. The great hall became deathly still. Queen Selene frowned. What is that? Alaric's smile widened. A forgotten arrest warrant. I have merely updated it. He broke the wax seal. By authority of the royal tribunal, Mara Holloway is hereby charged with practicing forbidden moon sorcery, manipulating the crown prince, and conspiring against the royal succession. Gasps spread across the chamber. Royal guards hesitated. Captain Rowan looked toward Lucienne, awaiting orders. Lucienne's voice became firm. No one touches her, but Alaric had never intended to rely upon palace law. High above the castle, hidden among the cathedral spires, dark figures quietly drew poisoned arrows. Members of the Brotherhood of the Crimson Veil had already entered the palace. Their true mission was never to arrest Mara. It was to ensure she never lived long enough to remember the rest of her past. The first arrow was released, and it flew directly toward the woman the moon itself had finally chosen. The arrow arrived before anyone heard the bowstring. A sharp whistle split the air, then another, then dozens more. Poisoned arrows rained through the stained glass windows of the great hall. Glass exploded across the marble floor. Guests screamed. Royal guards raised their shields. Prince Orion began crying. Lucienne moved without hesitation. He pulled Mara into his arms as the first arrow struck the throne behind them. The polished stone shattered. Not a single heartbeat later. The second arrow flew toward the infant. Ton Rowan threw himself forward. His shield intercepted the projectile only inches from the baby's blanket. The poison hissed against enchanted steel. The Brotherhood of the Crimson Veil had arrived. Not through the palace gates, through the forgotten passages hidden inside the walls. Black-cloaked assassins emerged from secret corridors, servant staircases, and ancient ventilation shafts. They had studied the palace for years. They knew exactly where to strike. Regent Alaric never looked surprised. He calmly stepped backward. So, they finally came. Lucien's eyes narrowed. You knew, Alaric smiled. I simply knew the truth would attract those who wished to bury it forever. Queen Selene stared at him. You allowed assassins inside this palace? I allowed destiny to choose. The queen's expression hardened. No. You chose ambition. The first assassin lunged toward Mara. Lucian intercepted him instantly. One strike. The assassin crashed through a marble column. A second attacker appeared behind the king. Captain Rowan blocked the blade. Steel rang through the great hall. Chaos erupted. Servants fled. Children cried. Nobles scrambled beneath overturned banquet tables. The Brotherhood ignored everyone except Mara and Prince Orion. Their orders were simple. Capture the woman, silence the child. Outside, the palace bells began ringing without pause. Every guard tower answered. Every city gate closed. The capital understood only one thing. The royal palace was under attack. Inside the great hall, Lucien's wolf surged forward. His golden eyes blazed brighter than molten sunlight. His breathing deepened. The ancient mate bond roared inside his soul. Every instinct screamed the same command. Protect her. An assassin reached for Mara again. Lucien caught the man's wrist. Bones cracked. The weapon fell harmlessly onto the marble floor. You will not touch her. His voice remained calm. That frightened the Brotherhood more than shouting ever could. Their commander stepped forward. A scar crossed his pale face. His cloak carried the crimson insignia of the Brotherhood. We were warned. About what? The king, Lucien answered. No. You were warned about the wrong monster. The commander raised both hands. Dozens of assassins attacked together. The great hall disappeared beneath a storm of black cloaks. Lucien took one step forward. The palace trembled. He took another. Ancient silver runes ignited beneath every marble tile. The entire chamber glowed. High Elder Benedict stared in disbelief. The Alpha Throne. It is awakening. Lucien raised one blood-stained hand. Everything stopped. Not metaphorically, literally. Every falling shard of glass froze in midair. Every arrow halted. Every assassin found their body suddenly too heavy to move. Time itself had not stopped. Reality had bent. Ancient Alpha authority, a forgotten gift granted only to rulers recognized directly by the moon goddess. Even Lucien looked stunned. He had never possessed such power before. Then he understood. The bond, Mara. The moon had accepted them. One assassin struggled desperately. I cannot move. Neither could anyone else. Lucien walked calmly through the motionless battlefield. He removed poisoned blades one by one from the assassin's hands. No unnecessary violence, no cruelty, only absolute control. Meanwhile, Mara knelt beside frightened servants and gathered the younger palace pages into a protective circle. Although danger surrounded her, she focused only on calming terrified children. You are safe. Stay together. Breathe slowly. Prince Orion stopped crying the moment she held him again. The infant rested peacefully against her shoulder. Captain Rowan noticed something extraordinary. Every frightened child instinctively moved closer to Mara, even children who had never met her before. It was as though kindness possessed its own gravity. Suddenly, the palace floor shook. A deep rumble echoed beneath everyone's feet. The hidden hall of mothers fully opened. A brilliant column of silver light erupted upward through the palace foundations. The ceiling did not collapse. Instead, the light passed harmlessly through stone itself. Within the radiance appeared translucent wolves formed entirely from moonlight. 1, then 3, then 12. Ancient guardian wolves, each larger than a warhorse. Each wearing silver markings no living wolf still carried. They surrounded Mara and Prince Orion, not aggressively, protectively. The Brotherhood commander stared in horror. The legends, they were true. Outside the palace, thousands of wolves across the capital lifted their heads simultaneously. Their howls echoed across every rooftop. Citizens poured into the streets. No one understood what had happened, only that something ancient had awakened beneath the palace. Inside the great hall, Regent Alaric slowly stepped toward the Moonlight Guardians. His expression remained strangely calm. "You believe these spirits protect you." He reached inside his cloak. And yet, he withdrew a black crystal etched with crimson symbols. High Elder Benedict gasped. "The Eclipse Stone." "No!" Alaric crushed it. Dark energy exploded across the chamber. The silver light flickered. The guardian wolves growled for the first time. Shadows spread rapidly across the marble floor. From within the darkness emerged towering figures wearing ancient black armor. Not living soldiers, echoes, forgotten warriors bound by corrupted magic. The Crimson Veil had not merely hired assassins. They had awakened forbidden spirits. Captain Rowan drew his sword. "Defensive formation!" Royal guards immediately surrounded Mara. Queen Selena joined them without hesitation. Valiant servants armed themselves with kitchen knives, fireplace pokers, and anything else they could find. No one abandoned the children. Lucien stepped forward alone. His armor glowed beneath silver moonlight. Blood ran slowly down his forearm where an earlier blade had cut him. He never looked away from Alaric. "You orchestrated the massacre years ago," Alaric smiled. "I preserved the kingdom. You murdered innocent families. I removed uncertainty. You stole a mother. I protected a throne." Lucien's voice became impossibly quiet. "You destroyed everything a king exists to protect." The Alpha King's wolf erupted. Golden light exploded across the great hall. The shockwave shattered every remaining window. The palace itself seemed to inhale. The guardian wolves answered with one deafening howl. Moonlight flooded the throne room. Shadow collided with silver. The battle for the kingdom's future had truly begun. Far beyond the palace, hidden inside abandoned catacombs beneath the capital, the Grand Master of the Brotherhood slowly opened his eyes. He smiled toward the glowing palace skyline. "So, the true Luna has finally awakened." He rose from his stone throne. "Prepare every remaining hunter. This war ends tonight." Moonlight and shadow collided with a force that shook the entire capital. The great hall became a battlefield unlike any recorded in royal history. Silver guardian wolves lunged through the corrupted spirits without fear. Their luminous forms tore apart the darkness that had hidden beneath the palace for generations. Every strike scattered crimson energy into harmless sparks before the light reformed again around them. The Brotherhood of the Crimson Veil had expected frightened nobles. They had not expected the moon itself to answer. The Grand Master entered through the shattered western gates, surrounded by the last of his elite hunters. His black armor carried no royal crest. Only a crimson wolf skull burned across his chest. He studied Mara carefully. "So you survived." Mara stared at him. Something deep inside her mind stirred. A memory, rain, fire, a desperate escape through hidden tunnels. She whispered without understanding why. "I know your voice," the Grand Master smiled. "You should. I gave the order to hunt you." The words shattered the final barrier inside her memory. Images rushed back. She remembered a hidden nursery beneath the palace. She remembered placing a crying infant inside a wooden cradle wrapped in a royal blanket. She remembered traitorous guards murdering loyal protectors. She remembered running through smoke while clutching the child against her heart. Then, a violent blow. Darkness, the river. Everything she had forgotten returned at once. Mara staggered. Lucienne reached her before she collapsed. What happened? Her eyes filled with tears. I remember. His breathing stopped. I remember everything. She looked toward Prince Orion. I carried him. The hall fell silent. Before anyone else held him. I carried him. Queen Selene slowly stepped forward. There was pain in her eyes, but no hatred. I knew there was something missing. Her voice trembled. They told me I had lost consciousness after the attack. They placed Orion in my arms. They told me I had saved him. She looked at Mara. But it was you. Mara shook her head gently. I never wanted your place. I only wanted him to live. Queen Selene's tears finally fell. She embraced Mara without hesitation. You gave me the chance to become his mother. You saved my son. The gesture stunned the entire court. The rivalry everyone expected never existed. Only gratitude. Regent Alaric's face twisted with anger. Enough! He raised another corrupted relic. You sentimental fools. The kingdom needs power, not compassion. Before he could activate the relic, Captain Rowan's sword swept through the air. The crystal shattered before releasing its curse. Alaric stumbled backward. For the first time, he looked afraid. The Grand Master roared. Hunters! The remaining assassins charged together. This time, the guardian wolves did not hold them. Royal guards advanced beside palace servants. Kitchen workers fought beside knights. Stable boys shielded frightened children. No one stood alone. The palace had become one family. Lucien stepped into the center of the battlefield. Blood flowed from cuts across his armor. His breathing grew heavier, yet his eyes never left Mara. An assassin slipped past the guards. He raised a poisoned dagger toward her. Lucien moved instantly. He intercepted the blade with his own arm. The poison burned across enchanted steel before reaching his skin. Ignoring the pain, he struck once. The attacker crashed unconscious across the marble floor. No unnecessary cruelty, no execution. Only enough force to stop the threat. The Grand Master attacked next. His enchanted spear collided with Lucien's sword. The impact echoed like thunder. Again, again, again. Each exchange shook the hall. Darkness surged around the hunter. Silver light surrounded the king. Finally, Lucien disarmed him. The spear slid across the floor. The Grand Master fell to one knee. You cannot kill an idea, Lucien lowered his blade. No, but I can end your violence. Royal guards immediately secured the defeated hunter in enchanted chains. Seeing their leader captured, the remaining Brotherhood members dropped their weapons. The battle was over. Only Regent Alaric remained. He attempted to flee through a hidden passage. Prince Orion suddenly reached toward him. The child began crying. Not in fear, in warning. One guardian wolf blocked the secret exit. Another appeared behind Alaric. Captain Rowan closed the distance. You are under arrest, Alaric laughed bitterly. You think prison frightens me? High Elder Benedict stepped forward carrying an ancient silver ledger recovered from the Hall of Mothers. It is not prison that awaits. He opened the record before the assembled court. Every page contained names, victims, witnesses, hidden decrees, and finally, the original testimony describing the massacre. Regent Alaric Thorne, Elder Voss, several dead conspirators. Every signature remained preserved by moon magic. The truth had survived, only hidden. High Elder Voss collapsed. I was told it protected the kingdom, Benedict answered quietly. A kingdom built upon lies destroys itself, Lucien addressed the entire hall. No executions. The nobles looked shocked. No revenge. Even Captain Rowan hesitated. Lucienne continued. They will stand before every family they harmed. They will confess every crime. They will spend the rest of their lives rebuilding the villages they destroyed. They will restore what they tried to erase. Murmurs spread across the chamber. It was a harsher sentence than death. They would live with the truth forever. Royal guards escorted the prisoners away. Silence slowly settled over the ruined throne room. Broken glass glittered beneath silver moonlight. Shattered columns leaned against cracked marble. Blood stained Lucien's armor, his hands, his face. Only then did he finally turn toward Mara. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then the king of the greatest wolf kingdom in the continent slowly removed his crown. He walked across the damaged hall. One step, then another. Every noble watched. Every servant held their breath. Lucien stopped before the quiet woman history had forgotten. He lowered himself onto both knees, but blood dripped from his fingertips onto the marble floor. His voice broke. I failed you. I ruled a kingdom that erased your name. I believed records instead of truth. I protected a crown, but I did not protect the woman who protected my family. Tears filled Mara's eyes. Lucien bowed his head. If forgiveness is beyond me, I will accept it. But if there is even the smallest place left in your heart, allow me to spend the rest of my life earning the trust this kingdom stole from you. Mara gently reached forward. Instead of lifting the crown, she lifted his chin. You cannot change yesterday, her voice remained soft. But together, we can change every tomorrow. Above them, the moonlight guardians bowed. The entire hall followed. Not to a throne, not to a crown, but to the truth that had finally returned. Dawn arrived beneath a sky washed in silver and gold. For the first time in generations, the royal palace felt quiet. Not because fear remained, it had finally ended. The shattered windows of the great hall welcomed the morning light, as craftsmen, guards, servants, and nobles worked side by side to repair what hatred had broken. No titles mattered, only purpose. At the center of the hall stood the ancient moon altar. Its silver runes glowed more brightly than anyone could remember. High Elder Benedict stepped forward carrying the crown of the first Luna. Unlike every royal crown forged from gold and jewels, this one had been crafted from pale silver branches that resembled moonlit vines wrapped gently around one another. It has never chosen a wearer by blood, he announced. It has always chosen by sacrifice. The hall became silent. Mara approached slowly. She still wore the simple servant's dress she had worn the day before. She had refused elaborate royal clothing. I have never wanted power, she said quietly. I only wanted every child to have the chance to grow up without fear. Prince Orion laughed happily from Queen Selene's arms. He stretched both hands toward Mara once more. The entire court smiled. Queen Selene carried the child forward herself. There is no greater mother than the one who protects a child, expecting nothing in return. Mara kissed Orion's forehead. Then she looked toward Lucienne. The Alpha King stepped beside her, not ahead of her, beside her. My kingdom once judged you by your position. From this day forward, it will judge people by their character. As Mara placed one hand upon the moon altar, silver light surrounded her. The ancient crown rose into the air without anyone touching it. Every guardian wolf bowed. The crown gently settled upon Mara's head. No thunder shook the palace. No overwhelming explosion of magic followed. Only warmth. Gentle, peaceful, complete. The moon goddess had made her choice. The silver pendant around Mara's neck and its twin from the Hall of Mothers merged into a single radiant emblem. symbolizing that the child, the protector, and the kingdom had finally been reunited in truth. The gathered nobles lowered their heads, the servants did the same. Even the royal guards removed their helmets in respect. Lucien took Mara's hand. Together, we will build a kingdom where no honest voice is ever erased again. Outside, wolves across the mountains answered with one final harmonious howl. It sounded less like a cry of war and more like a promise. Years later, children would learn the story not as the tale of a forgotten servant, but as the day compassion became stronger than deception. The royal records would forever remember that a baby's first impossible word had saved an entire kingdom from civil war. And perhaps that was the greatest miracle of all. Before this story comes to an end, let us ask one final question. If you had been standing in Lucien's place, would you have sentenced Regent Alaric to a lifetime of rebuilding the lives he destroyed? Or would you have believed some crimes deserved no second chance? Share your thoughts in the comments, because every perspective adds another chapter to this discussion. If this journey moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who loves unforgettable werewolf romance stories, and subscribe for more epic tales of destiny, courage, and the power of truth. Until our next story, may you never underestimate the quietest voice in the room.